How did Pierce Brosnan deal with so much loss? His answer was always the same: faith. He was Irish, he was Catholic, and the church had been a pillar his entire life. But faith would be tested in ways few men ever endure. At 71, the former James Bond made an announcement nobody saw coming. His first wife had died of ovarian cancer at 43. Then his daughter died of the very same disease at 41. The man who played the world's toughest spy was facing a battle no amount of charm or courage could win. Pierce Brosnan was born on May 16, 1953, in Drogheda, Ireland, into a world that gave him almost nothing. No wealth, no legacy, and no father. His dad, a carpenter named Thomas, vanished so early that Pierce couldn't recall his face, his voice, or his presence. His mother, May, worked as a nurse, but in 1957 she made a painful choice, leaving for London to find work and leaving 4-year-old Pierce behind. What was meant to be a brief separation stretched into 7 long years. He was passed between relatives, his grandparents in Navan, then an uncle and aunt in Trim. Each new home brought new rules, new schools, unfamiliar faces. Pierce never stayed long enough to belong. He learned to stay quiet, to watch, to survive. Teachers saw a bright but withdrawn boy, always staring out the window, never quite present. Everything shifted in 1964. At 11, he moved to Scotland, where his mother had remarried a kind factory worker named William Carmichael. Pierce felt torn, happy to have his mother back, but angry that another man now stood where his father never had. Still, William tried gently, teaching him to fish, to fix things, to trust again. One evening, William took him to the cinema to see Goldfinger. Sean Connery's James Bond lit up the screen, and that night rewired something in the boy. Bond was everything Pierce was not: strong, confident, in control. And Pierce wanted to be exactly that. At 16 he made a bold leap, dropping out of school and enrolling at St. Martin's School of Art in London, surviving on toast and tea while wealthier classmates surrounded him. Acting wasn't even on his mind until 1971, when he wandered into a theater workshop and saw a fire eater practicing. Instead of walking away, he asked if he could try. That single spontaneous moment rewrote his future. The group saw something in him, a mix of bravery and natural presence, and invited him to join. He trained at the Drama Centre London from 1973 to 1976, an unforgiving school where over 60% of students dropped out. He worked side jobs, studied Shakespeare, even learned mime and circus acts. He never gave up. His first real break came in 1976 with a stage thriller, then a difficult Tennessee Williams play that had flopped in America, but which Pierce brought roaring to life in London. Small film roles followed, brief appearances alongside Elizabeth Taylor and Helen Mirren. Then in 1982 came the turning point. He auditioned for a small role on a new show called Remington Steele, cast not as the lead but as a murder victim. One scene and done. But NBC's casting director saw charm, presence, something magnetic, and called him back for the lead. Over 200 actors had auditioned. His Irish accent nearly cost him the part, but once he stepped into the role, he simply was Remington Steele, cool, smooth, and mysterious. The show premiered in October 1982 and became an instant hit, drawing over 15 million viewers a week. Almost immediately, critics began saying Brosnan should be the next James Bond. Entertainment Weekly called him the most Bond-like actor since Connery. Bond producer Cubby Broccoli took notice. By 1984, the speculation had exploded, with TV Guide putting him on its cover asking if he was the next 007. Even Ian Fleming's widow said he looked and acted exactly like what her husband had envisioned. But fate kept twisting the knife. He was actually considered as far back as 1983, when Roger Moore wavered about returning. Broccoli took one look and said, "If he can act, he's my guy." But the studio panicked and paid Moore a fortune to come back. Then in 1986, when Remington Steele was cancelled and word spread that Brosnan might be Bond, the ratings surged, NBC reversed the cancellation, and his contract trapped him. He couldn't film Bond. The role went to Timothy Dalton, his own friend. Brosnan had to smile through the loss while watching from the sidelines. Through what fans call the lost years, Brosnan didn't disappear. He played a Cold War spy, took supernatural roles, even filmed tuxedo Diet Coke commercials. A not-so-subtle nod to the role that kept slipping away. But the deepest chapter of his life was unfolding far from the cameras. He had met Cassandra Harris, an Australian actress, in the late 1970s, and the spark was instant. They married in December 1980, and Pierce stepped into the lives of her two children, Charlotte and Christopher, as if he'd always belonged. When their biological father died, Pierce legally adopted them. Having grown up without a father, he poured everything into being the dad he never had. In 1983, the couple had a son, Sean. Life felt full and warm. There was a strange poetry to it all. In 1981, Cassandra had been cast as a Bond girl in For Your Eyes Only, and it was on that set that Pierce first met Broccoli. Cassandra believed in him completely and pushed him toward the role. She wanted it for him desperately, but she never got to see it happen. In 1987, while Pierce was filming in India, she fell gravely ill. The diagnosis was ovarian cancer, and it was everywhere. What followed were 4 brutal years, 8 surgeries, 18 months of chemotherapy. Her hair fell out, her body weakened, but she faced it with astonishing courage. Pierce called himself the quiet party, always present but often helpless. Their little son Sean would sometimes pretend to be the doctor. Cassandra's own mother had died of the same cancer. It was genetic, which meant Charlotte now carried the shadow too. In December 1991, her time ran out. Lying in bed one night, she whispered, "Please, darling, don't worry. It's just a life winding down." She died on December 28th, only 43. Pierce now had to raise 3 children alone and tell 8-year-old Sean that his mother was gone. He said it was the first time he had felt real grief, and that Cassandra remained forever in every fiber of his being. Brosnan was finally cast as James Bond in 1994. His debut in GoldenEye was a make-or-break moment for the entire franchise. MGM was nearly bankrupt. If it failed, Bond was finished. But GoldenEye earned $353 million worldwide. Brosnan did 90% of his own stunts, including a terrifying bungee jump off a 220-meter dam that insurers refused to cover. The film was a resurrection, even spawning the legendary GoldenEye video game. His next 3 Bond films earned over $1 billion combined. He won a Saturn Award, beating Sean Connery himself. Spielberg even called to offer him Indiana Jones, but he turned it down out of loyalty to Bond, a decision that likely cost him $50 million. Then came 2004. Filming in the Bahamas, life was good. He'd done 4 Bond films earning $1.4 billion. Then his phone rang. The producers cut him loose with no warning. The call lasted 47 seconds. "You were a great James Bond. Thank you very much. Goodbye." That was it. It later emerged they'd been secretly screen testing other actors for 2 years while pretending they still believed in him. That betrayal stung more than the firing. His kids saw him cry when the Casino Royale trailer appeared. But amid the heartbreak, he had found Keely Shea Smith in 1994, a journalist unimpressed by his fame who liked who he was, not what he did. They married in Ireland in 2001, and Pierce cried when he saw her walk down the aisle. She would become the one thing he could count on when everything else fell apart, because the cruelest blow was still coming. In 2013, Charlotte died at 41. It was the 3rd time this exact nightmare struck the same family, her grandmother, her mother Cassandra at 43, and now Charlotte. Pierce, who had adopted her and given her his name, could only watch history repeat in the worst way imaginable. At a cancer fundraiser, he stood on stage and spoke of holding the hand of his first wife, and then, just last year, holding the hand of his funny, wonderful daughter before this wretched inherited disease took her too. In her final weeks, Charlotte arranged her own wedding so her children could see that love still mattered. 2 weeks after saying "I do," she was gone, leaving a 15-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son, the same ages that echoed Pierce's own family decades before. Not everyone survived the grief intact. His son Christopher fell into addiction and trouble for years. But through every scandal, every loss, Keely stood by Pierce, holding him together. The tabloids mocked her weight, and Pierce defended her fiercely, saying he loved every curve of the woman who gave him 5 children. In 2024, she transformed her health entirely, and they celebrated 23 years of marriage. At their anniversary, he called her his North, South, East, and West. At 71, Pierce Brosnan keeps working, keeps fighting. A UNICEF ambassador, an advocate for cancer awareness, a man who turned unbearable pain into purpose. He couldn't save the 2 women he loved most. But he is still trying with everything he has to save others.